October 27, 1962. For a few terrifying minutes, the future of humanity rested in the hands of three men trapped inside a Soviet submarine. Two believed nuclear war had already begun. One refused to launch. His decision may have saved the world. The world had been divided for years. On one side stood the United States. On the other, the Soviet Union. Both possessed enough nuclear weapons to destroy civilization many times over. Trust had vanished, and fear had become part of everyday life. In the summer of 1962, the Soviet Union secretly placed nuclear missiles on the island of Cuba, less than 100 miles from the coast of Florida. If launched, they could reach major American cities within minutes. Everything changed on October 14th. An American U-2 spy plane flew over Cuba and captured photographs of the hidden missile sites. Within hours, the White House realized the world had entered its most dangerous crisis since World War II. President John F. Kennedy addressed the American people on national television. He announced a naval blockade around Cuba and warned that any nuclear attack launched from the island would be considered an attack by the Soviet Union itself. American warships moved into position across the Atlantic. Soviet cargo ships continued sailing toward Cuba. Every mile they traveled increased the risk of a direct military confrontation between the world's two most powerful nations. Hidden beneath the surface, 4 Soviet submarines approached the blockade. One of them was B-59. Unknown to the Americans, it carried a nuclear torpedo powerful enough to change history forever. Conditions aboard the submarine quickly became unbearable. The narrow steel corridors trapped heat, fresh air was running out, and exhausted sailors worked in temperatures above 40 degrees Celsius. Communication with Moscow had become almost impossible. Days passed without reliable information from the outside world. The crew had no idea what was happening above the surface. Every hour increased the tension, and every strange sound raised new fears that war had already begun. Then everything changed. American destroyers detected B-59 beneath the Atlantic Ocean. To force the submarine to surface, they began dropping practice depth charges. But inside the submarine, no one knew they were only warning signals. The American destroyers had finally found their target. Using sonar, they tracked the submarine deep beneath the Atlantic. The crew of B-59 had no idea they were now surrounded by enemy warships. To force the submarine to surface, the U.S. Navy began dropping practice depth charges. They were intended only as warning signals, but inside B-59, no one knew that. Each explosion echoed through the steel hull. The submarine shook violently. Cut off from Moscow and unable to contact the outside world, the crew believed the unthinkable. They feared World War III had already begun. Captain Valentin Savitsky reached a terrifying conclusion. If war had started, surrender was not an option. He ordered preparations for the submarine's nuclear torpedo, a weapon powerful enough to destroy an entire fleet. Hidden inside B-59 was a single nuclear torpedo. Unlike conventional weapons, this one could unleash devastation on an unimaginable scale. If launched, it could trigger a nuclear exchange between the superpowers. Launching the torpedo required the approval of 3 senior officers. Captain Savitsky agreed. Political officer Ivan Maslenikov agreed. Only one man remained unconvinced, Vasily Arkhipov. Arkhipov stayed remarkably calm. While panic spread through the submarine, he refused to believe that a full-scale war had begun without confirmation. He urged the others to think before acting. A heated debate filled the cramped control room. Every passing second increased the pressure. Outside, explosions continued. Inside, the future of millions depended on a single decision. Arkhipov stood his ground. He argued that the submarine should surface instead of firing the nuclear torpedo. His calm judgment slowly overcame fear, anger, and exhaustion. In the end, the launch order was abandoned. B-59 would not fire its nuclear weapon. A single decision, made deep beneath the Atlantic Ocean, may have prevented the beginning of a nuclear war. With the launch canceled, B-59 slowly rose toward the surface. The exhausted crew stepped into the fresh air for the first time in days. Only then did they realize that nuclear war had not begun. American destroyers surrounded the submarine, watching every movement. The situation remained dangerously tense, but neither side fired a single shot. The world had come closer to disaster than anyone realized. Behind closed doors, leaders in Washington and Moscow searched for a way to avoid catastrophe. Every message, every phone call, and every decision carried the weight of millions of lives. In the days that followed, both superpowers chose diplomacy over destruction. Agreements were reached, tensions slowly eased, and the immediate threat of nuclear war began to fade. Soviet nuclear missiles were removed from Cuba. In return, the United States secretly agreed to remove its Jupiter missiles from Turkey. The Cuban Missile Crisis was finally coming to an end. The world breathed a collective sigh of relief. Humanity had survived one of the most dangerous moments in modern history. But few people knew how close civilization had come to the edge. Vasily Arkhipov received no worldwide celebration. For many years, his actions remained largely unknown. Yet history would later recognize that his courage and restraint may have saved millions of lives. Decades later, declassified documents and eyewitness accounts revealed what had happened aboard B-59. The story shocked historians and reminded the world how fragile peace can truly be. History is often shaped by presidents and generals, but sometimes the future depends on one person making the right decision at exactly the right moment. Vasily Arkhipov was that person. Today, billions of people live their lives without ever knowing this story. One calm decision, made deep beneath the Atlantic Ocean, may have changed the course of history forever. If you enjoy true stories that shaped our world, subscribe for more untold moments from history.